Hello guys, in this tutorial we're going to take a look at how to use promises in JavaScript by writing a couple of simple functions. So a promise is an object which represents the completion or failure of an async operation and its resulting value. In JavaScript, promises are often used when performing network operation, and there's no need for using promises for simple data transformation. So for example, let's say you wanted to fetch data from an API, a bunch of numbers. So let's say fetch numbers. And then with that data, we want to perform some math operations and then log the result. Alright, so we got these three different functions we should use. So the first thing we need to do is fetch numbers, which for example could be a network operation. So let's say in this case, this is a network operation. So this should be a promise-based method, right? Then this next method, we're gonna perform math operations. This should not be a promise-based since it's a simple data transformation, right? And then log the result, not promise, right? Now this is not exactly what we're gonna do in this tutorial, but just to get an idea when to use a promise and when not to use a promise. So network operations, use a promise. Data transformation, nope, and other simple stuff like that. So you mainly use it for network operations. So promise can be in three different states. It can be pending, meaning it's not fulfilled and it's not rejected. It's the initial state of the promise. It can also be something called fulfilled, meaning that the operation completed successfully. And it can also be rejected, meaning that the operation has failed. I'm gonna go through this in just a second. So I'm using Node.js for this example, and I'm gonna use the build console. I got integrated into Sublime Text here. You can also just use Node as normal, of course. Let's say Node app, and it's gonna run the program that we're gonna write, or the code that we're gonna write. All right. So let's start by just creating. I'm just gonna zoom in a bit here to make it easy to read. A function called run. It's gonna be async because we're gonna use the await keyword to await the promise that we're gonna create. And let's just run that function like that. So what we want to do here is we want to first of all get some data, and for this example we're gonna use the wait keyword to make this method async. We're also gonna use try catch because it makes it easier to deal with errors. So this method function will actually call the promise, and then once we've written this, we're gonna go ahead and code the actual promise itself. All right. So let's start off here by defining a try catch. So in the try, we're gonna define a constant named res, which is gonna hold the result of the promise. I'm gonna say await, and then call a function called the get data, which we're gonna create later. And then let's just console.log res. So this is if everything goes all right, this will be called, right? Given that we have no errors from the actual promise. Then we got this catch where we're gonna catch any errors if we got any. So let's just console.log the error, and then we got this finally spelled like this. And let's just console.log done, right? So first of all, we try to perform the operation, which is gonna call the promise here. If we do have any errors, we're gonna catch them. And in any case, if it completes or if it gets errors, this finally statement is gonna be called. And then we can just say done, all right? So that's it for calling the actual promise. Now we're gonna create this get data function here, where we're gonna create the actual promise. So let's say function get data, and we're gonna return a new promise, which we're gonna create here. So return new promise. We're gonna pass in resolve reject. So this is the resolve object and this is the reject object. This is if everything goes right, we're gonna resolve the promise. If we have any errors, we're gonna reject the promise, right? And then here's an arrow function here. So let's say if true, so this is gonna be called all the time for this example. Let's just do instead of creating an actual network operation here, let's just simulate it by setting a timeout here. So let's do it like this. And let's set the timeout of 1000 milliseconds, so 1 second. And in here after 1 second, let's just return the resolve, right? So success. And if not true, let's say return reject. This is going to be the error then, of course, error occurred, right? So I'm just writing true here so we can change this simply to false when we're gonna try out the error, right? So let's go ahead and run this program now and see what happens. So as you can see here, we're calling the getData promise by using await. So we're awaiting the result and console.logging the result after 1 second. And then just in finally console.logging done, right? Now let's change this to false. And as you can see, we're getting an error occurred, which is the log from this catch here, right? All right. So it's not any more complicated than that. That's how you create JavaScript promise. Now we can call this in a couple of different ways. I prefer to do it this way because the error handling is really simple to read. If someone else goes in and read the code, they can immediately see, right? All right, we're trying to get the data here. If we're getting any errors, this is happening, and then finally this is happening. All right. Now we could write this with the then keywords. It works the same. I just don't prefer it because I don't think it's as simple to read. Even though it's very simple to read, it's not as simple. So what we can do is say get data and then say them, take the result. So we're first calling the get data function here, right? Then we're getting the result from the get data, passing it in here, and then we can console.log rest. So let's just try that. Let's change this to true to return this result after 1 second and run it. So yeah, we're getting the success here, as you can see. To catch any errors when using this chaining method, we're gonna say catch and then E for error, and let's console.log error. So let's change this to false to call the reject here from our promise. And as you can see, immediately an error is returned. We can also use the finally statement in getData the same way we do when using try catch. So let's say finally. Console.log done. Same thing, right? Let's try to call the resolve instead of the reject, and let's see how the finally is called. You can see the finally is called after we are done, right? So you can write the promise call like this, the promise callback like this. As I said, I prefer to do it this way because it's simply easier to read with using try catch. So yeah, and that's it. So as I said, we're gonna wait to get data. We're getting the data now down here. We can do anything because the code is gonna block until we get down here, until we have fetched the data we want. So this would be, for example, math operations, right? and that would be the network operation. Right? So as you can see, it's actually really simple working with promises in JavaScript. As dynamic as it is, there are multiple ways to do this as well. But yeah, that's how we work with promises. So I hope you learned something. Thank you. Bye bye.